Right, her husband. Her husband comes from the collection which is entitled Wodwo. Wodwo. It was the name of his collection of poetries. That was also Thistles. Thistles was also part of that collection. I meant to say it to you last week, but nevertheless, that's what we are dealing with. This was 4 years after the death of Sylvia Plath. And really, it's a bit of a reflective look at life. This particular poem, as a result of the context as to when this was published, may be significant in terms of linking to the relationship between Plath and Hughes. There was a notorious lack of comment made by Ted Hughes after the death of Sylvia Plath. He opposed any sort of confession or blame placed upon him in terms of the death of Sylvia Plath. Right up to the end of his life, he never said that he had any part to play in Sylvia's suicide. However, in saying that, he did publish a few poems which suggest that perhaps there was a feeling of remorse. Perhaps there was a suggestion that he had some comprehension of how he treated her, which was largely believed to be the reason for her death. So before we begin, we need to understand the idea of the word binary, B-I-N-A-R-Y. Binary is opposites. And so through this particular poem, he's looking at the idea of binary, of husband and wife, of man and woman, and of industrial and domestic. So if we begin with husband and wife and male and female, we can connect those two fairly easily. But certainly this is a time of largely a male-dominated society. There is an expectation of the man to go and be the income earner and the wife to be the stay-at-home wife / mother. So that idea of male goes to work, female stays at home and does a domestic role was highly ingrained in the society in which Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath were living. The industrial idea and the level of hardship that these men were facing, is particularly those who are in the coal mines, as is alluded to in this particular poem, is meant to be contrasted with the idea of domestic life being completely different. So coal was all about being dirty, and if you were a good coal worker, you would come home filthy. If you were a good housewife, the house would be clean. So there's that idea of binary going on there: dirty and clean, industrial and domestic, male and female, husband and wife. Certainly you've got to get your head around that idea in order to make any progress with this particular poem. We must here look at the use of the possessive and also personal pronoun of her and her husband, because ultimately that places the female as the subject of the poem, which is a little bit of a challenge to the customary dominance of the male. So usually it would be the coal miner, for example, or just the husband. But here, the fact that we have got the ownership of her husband is an important aspect to note. And in fact, throughout this particular poem, we are looking at a bit of a opportunity to assert dominance over the other. This connection between husband and wife is a battle, ultimately, to assert dominance over the other, which again is against the customary dominance of the male. The fact that she is challenging full stop is a bit of a paradox. However, as we go through, you notice that the husband and wife are linked, and they are linked to an excessive degree. There's never any hint here of abandonment or any sense of divorcing or whatever that might lead to. But certainly there's feelings of frustration. The husband is subversive in the way that he attacks the wife, and he undermines her actions throughout. But the power struggle between these two is really what drives the narrative. So you've got to get your head around the fact that this may have some element of a reflective view of Hughes and his own relationship. That would be a personal response, but you've got to explain that that is certainly not explicit. We are dealing here with 5 stanzas, each of which are quatrains. Large use of enjambment throughout, which creates a narrative flow to it. However, as always, the use of caesura is prevalent. So, her husband comes home dull with coal dust, deliberately to grime the sink in foul towels, and let her learn with scrubbing brush and scrubbing board the stubborn character of money. So, just to break this down, we are of course looking at this from the wife's perspective at this stage, although that does change. Comes home dull. So this image of being dull is a adjective in this particular instance, with coal dust. Now, if you are have any knowledge of coal mining, the dust that you get is extraordinarily thick and also extraordinarily difficult to remove. Particularly with the idea of coal mining, which is a physical activity, and therefore the sweat that creates the coal dust will stick to it. So this idea of coal dust being deliberately brought home is important, and that highlights his attitude towards the relationship. So doing anything deliberately means that there is a conscious decision to do so. So he leaves his workplace and he brings home this coal dust that basically encakes his body. So that's important because it shows that he doesn't have the same level of respect for his wife as you would expect. There's no consideration for her. The expectation will be on her to clean, and he deliberately grimes the sink. To grime, that verb is interesting, to grime the sink and foul towels. So if you foul something, you are dirtying it. And you notice there that the two use of the verbs, grime and foul, very descriptive verbs. You can't get past the assonance of foul and towel there. And ultimately, that use of the sound device really just accentuates the level of dirt that is being used here. Foul, towel, really draws attention to those two particular words. Towels, of course, are a symbol of domesticity, of cleaning towels and keeping things in order. Clean towels are what is often used as part of a show-off mentality. When you go somewhere on a holiday, you enjoy the clean towels idea. And let her learn. Notice here, let her learn. So there is an allowing here to let her. Griming the sink, fouling the towels, and letting her learn. Allowing this opportunity for her to realize, with scrubbing brush and scrubbing board, look at that use of the repetition, scrubbing, that verb scrubbing, really bringing out that chore lifestyle, the idea of domesticity, and that hard work that is involved in removing the grime and the dirt the coal dust from his clothing, and then from the household sink and household towels. The stubborn character of money. So look at the use of the SC sound, scrubbing, stubborn, that harshness of sound. The sibilants associated with the consonants there. Scrubbing brush, scrubbing board, stubborn character of money. And the implication from this is that his attitude is that if I'm going to work hard, which is denoted by the level of dust on him, then you need to work hard. Just these feelings of expectation from male to female. Perhaps frustration in the viewpoint that you don't work as hard as me, and therefore I need to remind you of how hard I work by making you work harder. That creates this air of superiority. And as we get through this first stanza, we get the idea that he is excused for doing this due to how hard he has worked. He is excused for doing this due to how hard he worked, and he is backed up by society. Society allows this, that's fine. That his level of work is glorified. And she must be submissive to him because she needs to learn the value of hard work as well. And we notice here we begin with the use of the coordinating conjunction. And let her learn through what kind of dust he has earned, his thirst and the right to quench it. So therefore we get this idea that he is drunk. Not only has he brought home these horrific dirt which gets into everything and everywhere, but he's also drunk, which may make him belligerent, which may make him difficult to be around. It gives that real working class view of this man. He is misogynistic, he is egotistical, and sexist. Notice that we've got the repetition here, or the parallel use of let her learn. Again, showing his view of her inferior status. Let her realize, let her know through what kind of dust he has earned his thirst. So I'm going to come home caked in this stuff so that she will know how hard I've worked. And I deserve to have a drink after work. I deserve to have this as an opportunity to relax a little bit. That's all you do all day. He has earned his thirst, so therefore again, accentuating through the verb earned the difficulty of the labour that he has had to endure. And the right, it is his right to quench it. So it's not just a privilege to go out and get drunk, but it is his right. He must do this. And what sweat he has exchanged for his money. This idea of a transaction. That's how hard I work and the money that I get, this blood weight of money, this adjective or the combination of the blood weight of money, the level of the hardship to which he has to be exposed. You must get the viewpoint here of his expectation of her to understand how hard he works. And he's really reinforcing this through the lack of cleanliness, through his level of intoxication or inebriation, and his expectation that she is going to chase round after him, clean his clothes, clean the house, and be understanding of how hard he works. This is then, the end of that, with the blood weight of money, we have the use of the caesura with the full stop, which is the first time that we've had any sort of punctuation in the middle of a line of poetry thus far. In fact, the only other use of punctuation we've had is at the end of stanza 1, and the rest of it has been the use of enjambment. Very long sentences. He'll humble her, which is the next part here. To make somebody humble means to almost humiliate them. With new light on her obligations. This idea of new light is really alluding to remind her. Not just of the what he wants her to do, but what she is obliged to do. Under society, under his rule, she is obliged to do this list of things. Clean my clothes, clean the house, allow me to do what I want, don't complain when I get drunk, and by God, understand how hard I work. And then we have this use of caesura again. This time it's an end stopped. And notice here that the next couple of lines are end stopped as well. So the punctuation changes here. And then we have this change in perspective here. So he humbles her with his expectations. He tells her what he wants, what she is obliged to do. And in response, we see a couple of interesting aspects. First of all, the fried woody chips kept warm 2 hours in the oven are only part of her answer. This is her response to her, quote, obligations, which is quite clearly now to cook dinner. We don't have any insight here as to whether he is late or not to dinner, but we can take two readings of this. First of all, kept warm in the oven for 2 hours may suggest that he's 2 hours late for dinner. It may also be part of her small protest towards him, to serve him up this fried woody chips, which are not ideal. If you leave chips in the oven at a low heat, they go very, very hard. It's just potato chips we're talking about here. And so perhaps we can assume that this is her little fight back. That I'll feed you, but I'm going to give you horrible food. So we may take the reading that she's 2 hours late, or we may take the reading that she's put on the dinner 2 hours early to provide him with this horrific food. So we see this, the fried woody chips. So look at those two use of adjectives, particularly the woody aspects. That denotes the gustatory image, like eating bits of wood. Sometimes if you go to a fast food place and you get a chip which is quite obviously been sitting around for a little bit longer than the other chips, and it's quite awful. Kept warm 2 hours in the oven, only part of her answer. So we get this idea here that she has an answer. She's fighting back in her own little way, her own sort of aims for opportunities. Look at the use of fragmented sentences here. The fried woody chips kept warm in the 2 hours in the oven are only part of her answer. This almost choppy way of writing this idea. Hearing the rest, he slams them to the fire, back and away, around the house, singing, "Come back to Sorrento," in a voice of resounding corrugated iron. So, we get this impression that she outlines, actually, how much work she has to do. Hearing the rest gives us that impression. Again, she is stating her claim on how hard she works. that the domestic life is not quite as easy as perhaps he is making it out to be. We could argue that the idea of coal mining might be a symbolic of any man's work. That the expectation that if a man is working and the woman is not, that when the man comes home, he has this expectation of bowing down to him. Haven't you done a great job today? You've gone and provided for the family. So that while coal dust is definitely on coal mining is definitely the extremity, that in fact perhaps Hughes is suggesting that we can see this in everyday life as well. So her protestations are slammed, it says here, slammed to the fire back. So disregarded through that use of metaphor, not actually being thrown to the fire back, but certainly that metaphor. And is away around the house. Notice the fact that we have this viewpoint of the present tense, and is away round the house in singing "Come Back to Sorrento" in a voice of resounding corrugated iron. That's again metaphor. Just going to this "Come Back to Sorrento," which was a 1900s song, early 1900s song. And you don't have to write this down, but just to give you the lyrics of this particular song. Sunlight dances on the sea. Tender thoughts occur to me. I have often seen your eyes in the night time when I dream. When I pass a garden fair and the scent is in the air, in my mind a dream awakes and my heart begins to break. But you said goodbye to me. Now all I can do is grieve. Can it be that you forgot? Darling, forget me not. Please don't say farewell and leave this heart that's broken. Come back to Sorrento so I can mend it. So you get the impression here that if your husband goes and sings about a lost love, it may have an impact on you, considering the way he has treated you since he got home. So he is using the song as almost an abusive technique, and she finds it in the next line an insult, where she has got the physical attribute of her back bunching into a hump. So she has been so afflicted by his treatment that she has created this physical bump as an insult. She feels that she has been accosted by him. And this idea of singing and giving what may be seen as in general, a loving gesture to sing to your partner is often a loving gesture, or often there are love songs that you would sing, or just sort of use as a bit of a source for enjoyment. But here he's using it almost as what we refer to as mimicry, M-I-M-I-C-R-Y, where you are using what is a beautiful idea for negative reasons. If you mimic something, then you are often taking the mickey out of something. He is taking the mickey out of her. For they will have their rights. Now we move from the singular, his, her, and we go to they will have their rights. Now rights are referring to aspects that are entitled to you. And each of these two here, these binary opposites of male and female, husband and wife, domestic life versus hard working life, have their perspectives. But at this point, the implication is that the rights that the man has is to go out and do what he wants, and the rights that the woman has is to stand by and allow this to happen and cook and clean and look after the children. Those are her rights. Their jurors are to be assembled from the little crumbs of soot. So the only thing that we can use as who are going to pay any attention to this is the soot. The crumbs of soot. Interesting that there is that use of food and work there. Crumbs of soot. So only soot will listen to her, really, complaining. And by the way, that soot comes from his boots. So she, in this life, has been brought down to domestic servitude, where the only thing that will listen to her is the dirt from her husband's boots. Their brief, now brief here is actually referring to a legal document. And a brief is, in legal terms, is an outline as to why one side should win over the other. It's the argument. Goes straight up to heaven, and nothing more is heard of it. So a couple of things here. Into heaven has got this idea of into the air, into nothingness, if you like. And heaven is obviously a religious connotation. But in this instance, we can read it as being just into the atmosphere. If you take the viewpoint that heaven is in the sky, then it's into the atmosphere. You could also read this as into death. Goes straight up into heaven, so ultimately it just dies with you. Any of your complaints just die with you because nobody else cares. And nothing more is heard of it. So, of course, we can make the connection due to the fact that this has been completed after the death of Sylvia Plath, that perhaps there is an element of this. These were her protestations, that she felt she was misunderstood, or that it was all about Ted Hughes. Perhaps we could read that. Or it could just be a view of life in England at the time, the expectations of the man and the woman. But we certainly get the impression that if she, and she is in inverted commas, if she has a problem, then she should talk to the dirt and the dust. Because that's the only people, or the only thing that is going to care. Interesting, though, that we move from the two sides, if you like, even though it is heavily dominated by the man, but the two sides, and then their rights, their jurors are to be assembled, almost as in this battle, this courtroom battle between these two people, husband and wife. That personification of a jury coming from crumbs of soot. And I want to leave it with you as a final thought to try and establish what is it that Hughes is trying to say. Is he agreeing with this? Is he saying that actually the man should be treated with more respect and the woman should be in a life of servitude? Or is he kind of subtly saying the presentation of the man as being drunk and coming home caked in dust and the expectations, is it actually right for the woman to feel this way? Or is it just a representation of society? Or is it actually the fact that this is about Sylvia Plath and actually nothing about coal mining? It's about Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath. So as you analyse this, your personal response needs to answer those questions. I've tried to be deliberate and not giving you everything that surrounds this particular poem to try and get you to think about what do you think he's really saying here. Who's in the right? Who's in the wrong? Is there actually a sense of equality being presented here, even if it is a bit submissive or a bit subversive? So think about that as you go through. If you get a chance, have a listen to that. Come back to Sorrento, have a listen to that. Think about that idea of the corrugated iron. Think about the rural connotations of corrugated iron, the industrial elements of, once again, we see steel coming through in poetry of Ted Hughes.